Okay, so we've now removed the original twine from all 10 locations on this binding here. So it's now ready to receive the new threads. And what I've done in the text block is I cut this loop, and in this example here, I just made a very small hole. To be honest, you could just as easily snip the fabric, it doesn't really matter, but for me, I made a small hole, pushed the twine through, so it will feed there. So the question is, how are we going to get this twine through these holes without damaging the leather and without driving ourselves insane and taking an enormous amount of time in the process? Not an easy task. I'll show you my method. I freely state that as an amateur bookbinder, there will be better methods, and certainly anyone in the medical profession is probably going to laugh at everything I'm about to do. But this is my attempt. So here's how I'm going to do it. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that these holes are as helpfully located as possible. In other words, a hole that's just going directly down through the board isn't very helpful if you're going to try and use a needle or something to push the twine through from the side. So what we want is to make sure that the hole is as angled as possible. Obviously be very careful with the leather here, angled as possible in the direction that you're going to be introducing the twine, which for these two, remember the twine originally came up through this hole, down through there, across and out here and ended. So I'm angling the hole, and there's no harm whatsoever in getting rid of a bit of cardboard as well if it makes life easier, so that the hole is as helpful as possible. Then how to actually thread the twine. Okay, so this is my method. Again, anyone who's ever sewn stitches in people will probably laugh at this. But as an amateur sort of bookbinder, I only have basic sewing tools to hand. So there's a needle, a thread that's double. Here's the twine from the new binding. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to simply use a bit of tape to bring these two together. I'm going to fold the tape over. I'm then going to snip the flag that results. Now, if I put any force on this, it'll just pull the thread out. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to fold this spare bit at the end. I'm going to take a second little bit of tape, fold the thread over and put a second piece of tape on. And that bend in the thread will stop the thread from pulling out if I need to pull on the thread with any reasonable force. I'm using the minimum amount of tape that I can get away with, because obviously it ultimately needs to all find its way through the hole. There we go, that's probably about as good as I'm going to get it. Okay, so we bring the binding back into shot. Now, I only have a limited amount of distance to work with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tip up the binding, just use my thumb to gently work the leather away from the holes, and then looking at it carefully, I'm going to work the needle into the hole like this. tip, make sure you use a good length of thread because the length of twine you have to work with is limited. Do the same going back. Now, the needle's so small, if the needle ends up going through the leather, it's not the greatest disaster in the world, but obviously try to avoid doing that. So now we're going to go underneath again and see if we can work our way up through the third hole. Now, one tip I'd give you, if it's resisting you, make life easy for yourself and work on the hole. Don't try and fight the board or, even worse, fight the leather. Just work on the hole until it's got the shape and angle that you need. It really will make life easier for you and you'll get less frustrated. Okay. Now, this is only going to get trickier and trickier as we go because the distance we have available to work is going to reduce. So what we're going to do is feed the binding through the holes. Again, the less tape you used here to attach everything, the less difficult the whole process is going to be. Now let's see if we can feed it through. Again, take the time to make the holes nice and big. You really will make life a lot easier for yourself when it comes to pulling the thread through. Now, let's see if we can see if she wants to come through now. I'm going to attempt just to make it a little easier to thread just by twisting it there at the end. Let's see if that helps us. Not really. This hole's just going to have to get a lot bigger. Oh, I can actually see the tape. That's hopeful. the thread came through. I got the tape just in time. All right, this is clearly going to be a significant piece of work, but there we go. There's our first one through. Okay, so this middle bit is now threaded through, but what I'm going to do is actually a slight change of tack. These are only 3 or 4 inches long, these sections of twine, and if I were to thread them all through, it's going to result in the binding and the text block be too close to one another for me to work with the needle. So after threading each through, I've actually removed the needle from this end, and what I'm going to do is just put some kind of object over the end of the thread here. I'm using a paper clip, could be absolutely anything to be honest. Just tie it on like that. Then what I'm going to do is actually kind of undo what I just did. So I'm going to feed, I'm actually going to pull the binding back out and put the thread back in place. The reason I'm doing this is it allows me to do this carefully here. There we go. And that's all good. There we go. Make sure you use a good knot. I thought I'd done a reef knot just then, but clearly that was not a reef knot. But pull the thread back like so, and the key thing is to get thread through all 5 of these and then attach it, and then we'll pull the twine through at the end. So the change of tack is thread these, attach all 5 to the twine, and then we'll pull all 5 through. Okay, this process actually went quite a bit more smoothly than I thought it would. We're now in a position where all 10 of the sets of holes have been threaded, and I've just anchored them with these sort of paper clips here, and I'm just keeping the threads carefully sort of separate and to one side, because obviously it'd be very easy to get these threads themselves knotted together like so. So we're now in a position to bring the new binding threads through a hole in the fabric, tie them to these threads, and gently pull all 10 of the new binding twines into place. So that's the next step. So I'm using a device my daughter got me for Christmas, a sort of a vise that just holds this text block vertical so I can work on both sides. And I'm taking each of the threads and tying it to the new twine. I never was a Boy Scout, so I don't know my knots that well, but I'm trying to make sure that I do reef knots and not granny knots, because obviously that'll be very weak and it'll all come undone. And I'm just pulling it into place ready and doing the final one here on this side. So. Okay. So all 5 of those are now in position. Now, question, do I pull this first or do I wait and do the other side first? I suspect I'm probably going to pull this first. Now this will be quite, this is a task to do slowly. just ease the text block away slightly and just help to work these through. So we take this one here at the bottom as the first, for example. The first hole is going to come through as this, so I'm going to pull this up like this. The moment you see it, help it through. Don't rely on the thread, the strength of the thread all the way. Then help it down through the next hole. Come on, goodbye. See, there we go. And then if you like, you can actually just go underneath, get into that loop. Oops. And just tease it through. Yeah, she's wanting to come through. Pull it on through, and then it's ready to go through the final hole at the end here. Again, just help it on through. There we go. Now we just do that 10 more times. Okay, so I've fed all 5 of the twines through. I actually put another volume underneath this board just so I could support my work here. Everything's in place. It's all looking good. One thing I'm going to do that the previous bookbinder did for the top and bottom, but not the 3 middle ones, was to actually loop it under one final time. And I think I'm actually going to do it probably for all of them, just because I'm lazy here. I'll just use the paper clip as an improvised needle, just to pull it through like that. Go. Make sure you get all the fibres when you do this. There we go. There we go, goes underneath. There we are, and that is how exactly it was done originally. But the bit that's not original is I'm actually going to do it to all 5 of them. Just to probably just push the whole paper clip through. It's easier. You'll just keep everything in place and avoid the risk of it coming undone when I flip the book over to do the other side. There we go. That's it, do it the easy way, Nick. There we are. There we go. Pull, tighten it. All right, so all 5 are now nice and tight in their place. I'm going to flip over and do the other side, and then we can have a think about gluing down the fabric. Okay, so we've threaded all 10 through. I've actually detached the threads now. Now, this is a dangerous time because it would be very tempting to tighten all of these to the maximum extent, close the book and go, well, hey, declare victory, and then to immediately break the spine of the binding. Reason being, we need to adjust these to the tension that's required to close the book, but not so much tension that we actually damage the book as we close it. There we go. So we want to have sufficient looseness in there that we don't, and this needs to be on both sides. There we go, that one's quite tight. So we just keep adjusting it gently until we get to a level where we can close the book over, but without damaging the spine. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So just, yeah, that's looking pretty good there. So still some work to do with the labels and so on, but that's kind of where we want to get to. And the majority of the work of holding the boards to the text block will be done by the string, with this fabric just adding a little bit of extra strength there. But that is basically the boards reattached in much the same way as they would have been 300 years ago. So the final step for this phase is I'm going to just take a bit of time to flatten down these holes. Now the reason I'm doing this is it just enables the book to close naturally. It reduces the tension on the leather, on the spine, and it will just make for a smoother finish and a more long-lasting repair ultimately. So yeah, that is looking a lot better now. Same thing here, any sort of bits and pieces like this we can just remove, and like so, like that, there we go, and just push it down. In time, the actual twine itself will also flatten down, like so, until we just get a nice flat finish like that. Obviously this will be covered by fabric and then ultimately by paste down. Yeah, so we have the ribbon, we have the headband and tailband in place. We've basically saved the book.